Welcome, everyone. We're just going to wait till 6 o'clock on the dot to start. We're glad you're here. Our panelists have all returned and they're eager to get started. We'll just give everyone another minute to join. I know it's 6 o'clock and everyone's ready to get started, but I'm kind of watching the participant numbers go up like it's a game show. But hi, Phil Woodruff. We see you.
Yeah, there's Phil.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, Greg, if that's all right with you.
Do it.
Okay, let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Aerospace Education, Inspiring the Workforce of Tomorrow. I'm Amy Spowert, President and CEO of the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
And I'm Greg Principato, President and CEO of the National Aeronautic Association. This is the 7th in a series of webinars brought to you by a collaboration between the National Aviation Hall of Fame and the National Aeronautic Association. To learn more about our wonderful organizations, please visit our websites.
So this is our first part 2, and it's necessary after the survey results, emails, and phone calls asking for more of this amazing panel. As we go through this webinar, please feel free to send your questions, and we will do our best to incorporate them into our conversation.
The future of aviation and the American economy depends on a workforce well steeped in STEAM concepts and drawn from the entire talent pool. This webinar features accomplished and thoughtful leaders who will discuss how to make this a reality. Returning to help us examine all this, we have the amazing panel, as Amy said, that you met during part 1 in December.
Sheila Contino teaches AP Physics at Oakton High School in Vienna, Virginia. While teaching in Texas prior to her current role, Sheila began developing ways to introduce rocketry into her curriculum. Her creativity and passion for motivating her students led to a program that earned national recognition, including an invitation to the White House to meet President Obama. In 2011, Sheila was chosen as the National Aviation Hall of Fame's Crossfield Aerospace Teacher of the Year.
Jim Gregory is chair of the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at The Ohio State University. He designs innovative and international hands-on learning experiences for aerospace engineering students. In 2017, he led a team of students and researchers that set national and world records with an autonomous drone. He's the 2020 recipient of the NAA's Brewer Trophy for Excellence in Aviation Education. John Langford is the founder and CEO of Electra.Aero. He was founder and CEO also of Aurora Flight Sciences, and also a past president of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, or AIAA. He's a guiding force behind the Team America Rocketry Challenge, or TARC, which received the 2014 NAA Brewer Trophy and the 2020 National Aviation Hall of Fame Spirit of Flight Award.
Scott Mccomb is the Raisbeck Aviation High School Science Department Chair. As such, Scott developed and continues to refine a program of physics of flight and aerospace engineering that includes encouraging community connections and creative problem-solving techniques that challenge students with aerospace activities. In 2019, Scott was chosen as the Hall of Fame's Crossfield Aerospace Teacher of the Year. Hi, Scott.
Hi, so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Everyone look out at Scott's window. Like, it's awesome. That's his classroom with image. Anyway, I saw Charlie Bolden say hello. I saw somebody say OH, and I think Jim Gregory's supposed to finish that. He's on
There you go. I also saw someone from Korea sign in.
And Croatia as well.
Excellent.
Thanks everyone for attending. And Michael Coelho, our board chair. Welcome, Michael. But Greg and I were super excited after the excitement from our last webinar, and we have to give kudos to the person who responded to our survey saying that the only thing that could have improved our first webinar was that if we gave out donuts. So we want you all to know if there was any way we could give each and every one of you a donut, we would totally do it.
You mean there's no donuts? That's why I'm here. You mean there's no donuts?
Okay.
What?
So when we last met with this panel, we had an overwhelming number of people want to know more about Sheila. She is amazing. And I'd like to begin the whole conversation by asking Sheila, oh, we have people watching from the Philippines. I have a feeling Sheila has a huge fan club out there. Sheila, would you please tell a little bit about your story, how you came to America and how you came to become a physics teacher, and what do you find satisfying about that role?
Ooh. Okay, so well, first of all, I'm thankful to God again for giving me the second opportunity to be part of this webinar. Thank you to all the viewers last time for demanding a part 2. And of course, NAHF and NAA, you guys rock. You know, putting this together is hard, but you guys are amazing. So to answer your questions, how did I come to the United States? A little bit of a background, back in 2000, year 2000, there was a major, I don't know if you remember, there was a major shortage nationwide in the United States with teachers, particularly in the field of science, mathematics, and special education. And at that time, I was teaching in Chiang Kai-shek University or Chiang Kai-shek College at that time. And I'm more of a liberal kind of teacher. I'm not so much of a convention. I really wanted to take the risk, and I'm very passionate with what I love. I like to go to different country. I found it very impossible because usually, if you come from a third world country, to fly in an airplane, that is either luxury or just is for those who are, who could afford it. So at that time, I felt like that's physically very impossible for me. But when the opportunity came that science teachers, math teachers are needed in the United States, so very boldly I applied in a non-immigrant working visa. A school administrator from Texas actually came to the Philippines to conduct the interview, and I passed. I waited for about a year. And after that long wait in 2001, 9/11 happened, and I felt like there is no way I'm going to be able to make it. But luckily, 2002 in the summer, I was called and said, you are going to fly. So I flew to United States. I went to El Paso. It was my very first flight experience in my life. And I was up for 30 hours flying from the Philippines, crossing the Pacific, all the way to Newark, New Jersey, then Houston and El Paso. It's a long, long trip, but it's worth it. And I ended up teaching middle school science in El Paso, Texas. Now, why did I teach physics? I actually have a degree in physics. I graduated from Philippine Normal University in Manila. And my first teaching experiences were mostly in the university. So I taught students who are actually older than me. And then I moved to high school, prior to teaching to the US. Now, physics is a tough course. And that's the reason why I like it. Because, I love challenges. I believe that physics generates that fundamental knowledge, that foundation that's needed for future technological advances. And I am biased because I'm a physics person, but I think that physics actually continuously drive the economic engines of the world. Sorry for the other courses, but that's just me. That's my opinion. Now, my most satisfying role, what's my most satisfying or what's the most gratifying in this particular role? I think it's the most satisfying is most rewarding would be being able to somehow influence the future. I have been teaching for almost 28 years. So therefore, I have more than thousands of students that I've taught in my lifetime. And I believe that at least, I know that at least one of those thousands of students that I have had learned physics, they had fun in class, they learned life skills, possibly got inspired, became part of, or now is contributing to the workforce. and has become a responsible and ethical and good citizen of this world. So being able to touch a student life in a positive way, that is a very satisfying feeling when they come back to you and they say thank you for being part of my life and influencing my future. I can really say that I have done my role, and thanks be to God, I did it well.
If that isn't the most humble answer in the entire world, there are so many gaps, but we could do a whole webinar on you, Sheila, because that was the most humble answer, because we all know there's a lot of things missing in there. Like all the students that you know have been inspired by you, all the students that you've taken to the White House, all the award winners, all the people that are recognized, all the people working in Boeing and Airbus and all the other industry leaders because of your influence in the classroom. So,
It
but
only
thank you.
takes one. Something only takes one, and you're already satisfied.
Let's go ahead and pull up that first. People already saying nice things about you. That first poll question. What is the time period that most students become bored with science in the classroom? I'd love for our viewers to go ahead and answer that. We'll take a minute. And Amy, go ahead and show those results whenever you feel comfortable. I'm going to go ahead and start talking to John Langford. John, research suggests that students lose interest in science around middle school. How do teachers keep students engaged, and how do we motivate educators who are not interested, knowledgeable, or fearful of aviation and aerospace principles? What do we do? How do we do this?
So Amy, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Am I coming through? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, you do it through exactly the kinds of hands-on experience-based learning that Sheila was really talking about, and the folks on the call really it shows the power of taking a real community to do this, and I think one of the great examples of all time is this Team America Rocketry Challenge, which some of the organizers, Trip Barber is on this call, the folks from the Aerospace Industries Association, I see Marion Blakey on the on this call as well, and the folks in the government, like Charlie Bolden played a huge role in helping to make all this happen. And it's those things that inspire, that reach kids at that critical time of their life where they don't really know what they're interested in, right? A lot of education is exploring possibilities, opening doors. A lot of what we as educators do is help people open the doors, walk through them, and find out which ones they really want to make a part of the rest of their life. And so as aerospace educators, giving them the chance to discover the passion, the excitement that all of us, I think, on this call have discovered at some point in our life is really what it's all about. And so the earlier the better. But certainly middle school is sort of the prime time, I think we're all concluding, in terms of where you want to open up formal programs.
Yeah, and I think our viewers agreed with that. Middle school was overwhelming, the choice, and I got that question from the FAA, and their answer was 12 is the age that most kids get bored. And we learned from our first webinar from, I think it was Sheila or Scott, who said that the young kids, elementary age, are actually quite fun to teach because they're not afraid to take risks. Scott, are there resources out there? Are there curriculum resources for teachers who may want to teach aviation and aerospace but aren't fortunate enough to have a dedicated school or curriculum already in place?
Oh, there are about 1 billion, right? Depending on how deep you want to go and how much time you are willing to spend. So from NASA to FAA to the General Aviation Manufacturers Association to, oh my gosh, right? I'm sure I'm for the AIAA, right? There's about 1 billion different places, right? And right, as with any sort of audacious project, right? You can dive in deep wherever you want, and right, there's a constant pull in education about balancing something interesting and audacious with, right, we need to cover this much content prior to, whenever we get to where we want to go. Right. So so as teachers think about, I don't know how many teachers are on the call, but I will share that in my, 20 some years of teaching, what I've found is that diving deep is a much more powerful hook than going shallow, right? Is if we think about inspiring young people to pursue careers in aviation and aerospace in particular, allowing them to have the opportunity to see themselves in a role of doing aviation and aerospace related things is a really important piece of that puzzle. Right. So I would argue that the curricular resource, I think that teachers can find that probably pretty quickly. I think the real challenge is how do you structure a classroom in such a way that students have those opportunities. Right. Are workshops available for elementary teachers? Absolutely. There are workshops available for elementary teachers. And right there's Title II money available for professional development, particularly in math and science. And right, so there are opportunities available. The other thing I would encourage people to do is to find a thing that they feel excited about, or either because they're personally passionate about it, or they just want to learn more about it. Excuse me, and dive deep in there. Right, I didn't know much about aviation when I started teaching at Racebeck Aviation High School, and I said, tongue in cheek, sort of halfway through the interview, well, you should probably find me someone to get my pilot's license. And 6 months later, I was a private pilot. If you are willing to put the information, if you're willing to make the ask, there is a world waiting to say, damn it, you're doing a cool thing. How can I support you?
Sure.
So.
And one of the things that Greg and I are going to do after this, this was another overwhelming question, and don't judge this webinar by the number of participants you see, if everyone can see, because we had hundreds sign up for this, and we know it's because there are teachers who want to get this information that Scott's talking about right now, but can't tune in at this time. So they're signing up so they can get the link, because more people watched the recording of it last time than actually watched it live. So we know that that's what's happening. So everything that you all are sharing is going to be in a list available to educators after these webinars. Sheila, say we have a teacher who's doing a good job of teaching aviation or aerospace in their classroom, but they're not connecting the kids. Are there some ways of connecting the principles of aviation to practical life? So maybe a kid might, that might ignite a spark. Are there practical ways to incorporate it? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm always kind of like on mute, but there are many ways where you could actually see the real application of aviation and even aerospace into our lives. It's just that, when you are in an isolated kind of like place, like where I used to teach in Presidio, the tendency is not to have so much of that exposure. And so it can be tough for a student to actually have that meaningful connection or relevance. So we as teachers have to devise a way in order for us to expose them to aerospace and aviation. So maybe taking a field trip to museum, going to nearby airports and kind of like watch, flights and the like, encourage them to watch NASA TV. I mean, I usually do that with my own kids, tune in to the NASA channel. You get to see so many spin-offs that were kind of like generated from, aerospace and education studies. And possibly, do demonstrations in the classroom that will incorporate the flight. But I think having that talk or that discussion with the students regarding the benefits that we can actually get from aviation and aerospace would be cool. Besides besides military aviation for protection and defense. Now, the fact that there's, this air transportation, it connects people, it connects cultures and businesses across the world, across continent. It promotes and stimulates tourism and even generate trade. And most importantly, there's so many calamities that are happening, emergency stuff that's going on. With aerospace and aviation, it also kind of like provides access to remote areas, helps us in delivering, aids and relief in cases of emergencies. So if students are aware of these things, these kinds of things that's happening in real life, they may develop interest in aerospace and aviation and potentially find, careers in it.
I love that you're answering in this like beautiful environmental humanitarian way, and Scott's sending help save a chocolate bunny from reentry, and where's the third runway go across the bottom. I think they're, because you're hitting kids both, both like little kids or even older kids want to save the chocolate bunny, so they want to save humanity. I mean, it's all connected, right? Anyway, I love it. Jim, we got a question from a viewer named John that I want to try to connect to the question I was going to ask you. What I wanted to ask you is, what is the value of teaching aviation and aerospace to students who are not interested in the field? And John sent in a question, I don't know if you saw it there, but is STEM working? I mean, can we connect those questions? Is STEM working? And what's the value of teaching it to kids who aren't even interested in it? Can you help us there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Sheila's comments were very profound and insightful in this regard, because the aerospace and aviation has such broad impact on society that it affects all of us. Maybe this wasn't true 50 years ago, but most people have been on an airplane. And maybe 50 years from now, most people will have been on a rocket ship and have been to space. We can only hope. And so I think this, whether it's the impact on our climate with energy usage and the role of space observation in that, or international relations. I mean, aviation and aerospace technologies have a significant impact on all of these. Maybe I point to the motto of the Ohio State University, education for citizenship. And I think that's a common motivating factor for us as educators is, this is an important part of educating citizens. And so we think most people need to have a good awareness of this.
Awesome. Charlie Bolden keeps on sending comments to you all, including to Sheila and Scott. I hope you all are seeing that. Amy, let's go ahead and throw out poll number 2. What subject is the hardest to incorporate in aerospace principles? And this question came from a really cool curriculum that they have on the FAA website that has a model, a middle school, I think it's in New York, and it shows how to connect every subject to aviation and aerospace. But, I don't have a correct answer because there isn't one. I'm just interested to see what you all think. While everyone's answering that, I want to ask Scott, how does an aviation-focused school incorporate subjects other than STEM?
I love that question so much. We have a saying. So I teach at Raisbeck Aviation High School. It's a school that started in 2004, specifically to address the needs to find a way to connect the heads, hearts, and hands of students around the work that they're doing, right? We know when students go to a career and technical center that their hearts just open up, right? The fact that they can touch a thing and manipulate a thing means that they will go, they'll go to great lengths to have that kind of educational experience. And unfortunately, many of those programs have a reputation of being not super rigorous, academically speaking. And so when we started our school, right, the intention was to marry both the love and passion associated with the career and technical side of things, with the academic rigor associated with a college-bound, traditional college-bound, but also pretty stuffy curriculum. The reason I bring that up in the context of your question, Amy, is because the theme that we landed on at our school is that aviation is in fact everywhere. Right? It's very obvious if a student walks in and says, I want to be a pilot, right? Okay, cool. We have, right, there's a sort of a traditional path. I want to be an engineer. Okay, right, that's a pretty obvious connection. No, I want to be a graphic designer. Well, someone actually needs to market planes. Someone needs to market companies. Someone needs to communicate, Someone needs to design the interiors. Someone needs to handle the logistics. Someone needs to build them. Someone needs to, right? There's about 1 billion different ways that aviation plays out, and that really touches every major theme. If you look at the Common Core Curriculum, Next Generation Standards, the 21st Century Skills from the CTE world, aviation can tie very neatly into each one of those. If you think about any major airport in the world, it in fact runs as a small city, right? They have carpenters, they have wildlife biologists, they have, right? These are things that they're in charge of doing. And so the question is, again, less about, I think, where aviation fits as much as where doesn't it fit. So you can, if right, where there's a will, there's a way. And again, as we look to inspire our young people in pursuing these careers, right, a quick phone call to your local airport will be a treasure trove of information.
That's a great answer. And Amy showed the answers while Scott was talking, and I think social studies what came up as the hardest. But John, I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit and ask you how can we make schools aware of programs like TARC, which incorporate so many aviation and aerospace principles? How can we help them understand the value enough to incorporate it into their curriculum?
Right, and you raise a great point, and it's not just the teachers, I think, who need to be made aware of the opportunities in that, but it's also one of the things that we see is that a lot of the infrastructure around the teachers, the administrators, the school systems, the school boards, also need to be brought up to speed on some of the incredible opportunities, because some of the aviation related things, at first, a lot of them involve getting out of the classroom, right? I mean, you were talking about all of the different disciplines that you tie in, and I don't want to make it sound like model rocketry is the answer to every question on here, but as you look at that list of subjects there, you can touch each of them, tie them directly into aviation, and getting kids out to, whether it's airplanes, airports, building and launching rockets, all of those. I mean, we take for granted that those are fantastic activities, but at first introduction, they can sound daunting or even dangerous. And I think one of the things that we all need to work together on is making sure that the administrators and the school systems understand the value of this experience-based learning, and help the teachers make the time and have the resources to do it. And that's one of those places that your organization, the NAA, the AIA, the AIAA, we all play important roles in that education process. It's not just students we're educating, it's also the whole education system that we need to help and bring along with us.
Yeah, I think a couple of points that have been made already, very interesting, Jim Gregory talking about citizenship and how it all fits together. Scott talking about wildlife biologists at airports. A friend of mine was running the Oakland airport, and they had grasses growing after the Miracle on the Hudson thing, and the grasses attract birds, and you don't want birds near an airport, but it was against the law to cut the grasses down because they were wild. So he found a goat herder to come in and eat the grass, so he became a goat farmer for a little while as an airport director. A big part of what people wanted to know more about is the path from high school to college. And we want to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about really getting into this topic and having a real fruitful discussion. I really want to involve everybody. First, let's put up the third poll question, and then I've got a question for Jim Gregory to kick off the next segment. How many distinct careers are there across the aviation spectrum? It's already been talked about how it's not just flying a plane or flying a rocket or building them. There's a whole bunch of other things. While we're waiting for people to vote, and there is an answer to this one, I want to get Jim to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to bring everybody in. Let's talk about how to connect, the future workforce and these jobs and everything else. So Jim, can you talk a little bit about the best path for partnerships between high school and higher education and corporations, bringing all of that together? You kick us off with that.
Sure, definitely. It's as you indicated, it's a pathway, right? And they're all connected to one another. In a word, I think it's about relationships, building these connective relationships for partnering. That's the backbone for it. And so I think, for those who are interested in partnerships, the best thing to do is to look around to see who's your neighbor, so to speak. What companies are local, what universities are local or nearby, and then to reach out. I think sometimes we're reluctant to reach out, thinking people are busy, and indeed folks are, but a little persistence often pays off. And from my role at the university, I know that many of our faculty, we do incentivize, and we want them to partner with K-12 educators on STEM outreach programs and lots of innovative connected programs. And then likewise with industry, connecting with industry for co-sponsorship of programs and projects for the students to work on. I think there are a host of ideas of what that could look like, and maybe we can brainstorm some of those together. But in a word, I think it's the relationships and that are the backbone for making really cool creative projects happen.
A little bit of shoe leather. So here are the answers. And actually, there are 59 individual job types across 10 occupational fields as identified by the FAA, but guessing it's probably not an exhaustive list. So those of you who picked 80, you might have been technically wrong according to the FAA, but you might actually be right. Jim, you talked about, ways to make, get partners and make them work. I'd really like to hear from everybody here on this panel. As Amy said at the beginning, high school, college, a guy who hires folks and all that, and all of you involved, even in reaching out to much younger kids to get them interested. How do you make those, partnerships work? What challenges arise? And talk a little bit about how you identify partners, especially if you're, elementary school teacher and you've got a lot going on or whatever, and you want to try to, or middle school teacher. It might be intimidating. How do you identify those partners? Maybe Sheila or Scott can sort of kick that part off. Obviously, Scott, you've got partners at your front door, but Sheila, maybe talk a little bit about that, and then we'll just open it up to the entire panel.
It's, in the past, I had a little bit of trouble, kind of like finding resources. And so partnering with universities and some other industries and asking them exactly, what do you want? What do you want my kids to have? What specific skills do you think they should need? So again, it's more of the teacher's initiative to actually reach out and find that resources and bring it to the classroom.
Tell them about the goat. Tell them the story about the goat.
When it comes to resources, I do not want to complain about lack of funds and resources being one of the barrier or the challenges in order for us to experience and provide such kind of wonderful experiences for the students. I don't want that to be a reason, because like what I said on the first webinar, it's not an excuse. It should not be a barrier. In our case, when I started teaching in Presidio, where it's really like geographically isolated and economically disadvantaged, it's an underserved community, population of 5,000. The language is 98% of the students are Hispanic. We don't have much of the resources, but we try to find our way. So one of the resources that we did to be able to get some funding is I use the locals. In the Mexican culture, they love to eat goat. So I felt like, okay, one of the suggestions from the parents is to raffle the goat. And it may sound funny that we are raffling an animal, but that is our way to show that the district in particular, that we really are wanting to to compete. We really wanted to provide this opportunity to the students. So regardless of whether we have the money or we don't, we are going to figure it out ourselves. We always say, "Si puede." In Tagalog, "Kaya natin to," which means we can do it. That's how it means in English. So that goat, we raffled the goat, and if somebody wins and nobody wants that goat back, whoever the winner was, they will donate the goat back. So what I did was I auctioned the goat during the arts festival, and true indeed, like, it's not that much, maybe $1,200 in one night, but that's amazing. That would already send my students to the national competition, and that's that rocketry experience that I had, with TARC is the highlight of my career. So I'm still very thankful up to this moment for that experience.
Yeah,
I just want to say the most surprising thing in this whole webinar so far in 35 minutes is we've had 2 stories about goats.
Greg, I think one of the challenges that it's incumbent on all of us to really step up to is not to get aerospace education sort of stereotyped as something that only well-off school districts can afford to do. Obviously, it's easier with the more support that you have, but part of how we build the diversity in the industry is that we make sure that we make it accessible to every school district, regardless of the tax base that is supporting them. And I know the AIA is working hard on that, and the director of education at Estes is someone who's very passionate about this and how you teach this in places like Haiti. And for example, you can build aerospace vehicles literally with elements that you take out of the trash. I mean, and that's actually another interesting exercise, right? Of how do you build these things out of ordinary and ordinary looking materials that teach the first principles that we're talking about. So I think the economic diversity is really an important part of our story as well.
That's a wonderful point, John. And sometimes that scarcity of resources can lead to tremendous creativity in coming up with nice solutions with what we have on hand.
Does anybody else here have images of Apollo 13 and Gene Kranz trying to build how to, never mind. Anyway, Greg, I'm sorry, interrupted.
No, that's all right. That's all right. No, but that's sort of the point, right? Or you watch one of these, cooking shows or whatever, and they say, here's a bunch of common things, make a gourmet meal out of it. I mean, all these things sort of come together. And we've talked about some of the challenges that might arise. If any of the 4 of you have a good story or 2 about, trying to do some of this, and then there was a challenge that just seemed insurmountable, and then you were able to, you were able, by the way, somebody just asked if we can have a record of the chat later. The recording will go out afterwards. And as Amy said before, we're going to make a catalog of the various resources that have been mentioned both in this webinar and in the last one, and combine them together and get them out to everybody. But if somebody's got a really great story about a challenge or 2 that you faced and how you overcame that, I see Scott has unmuted himself. Maybe that means he's got a story.
I know Scott has stories like this.
Well, I think about where I was, 15 years ago when I joined the staff of Raisbeck Aviation High School, right? So I'd been teaching at I'd been teaching physics at an art-based high school in Ohio, and have just a wonderful time. But really, my knowledge of aviation was so limited, right? I'd been on a commercial jet, I don't know, 10 times, 15 times. I'd been in a private plane once, but if you told me it flew because of magic, I would have been like, okay, I see that.
You mean it doesn't fly because of magic?
That sort of was the depth of my understanding. And so I when I started working here, the mandate was do something interesting with aviation and aerospace. And I said, but I don't know what that means. And really it was 3 emails. I said, hey, I'm a new teacher at Raisbeck Aviation. We're at Aviation High School. I'm excited to do this thing. Can you help? Right. And I sent it out to 20 people. And there were 2 people who replied. And I said, that's so great. Thank you for replying. Can you send it to your networks? And they did. And in that second circle, 7 people replied. And I said, that's so great. Thank you. Can you send it out to your networks? By the time I was done, 3 steps later, I had over 50 people banging on my door saying, how can we help?
That's what Jim said.
Which is right, which is to say, if you have the time to make the relationship, the help is there for you. I'm struck by Sheila's comments when she said, right, the lack of resources is not an excuse. Right, that the thing that we need to do is have the courage to step forward and be bold in our ask, to be bold and say, here's the audacious thing that I'm doing. People want to be involved in that. So, right. So as teachers, as we think about what is that inspiring thing that's inspiring to us, that's inspiring to our students, that it is, right. If you have that question answered, the community just is waiting for an invitation. So that's my story, right? And so now 15 years later, I've had internships at Blue Origin. I've had internships at Boeing. I've done research in and with nuclear radiation. Right there I've helped build a national solar car, the winner of the National Solar Car Challenge. And really it comes from saying yes when people knock on the door.
Well, and you
If
mentioned
I may
Sheila.
add a little bit, but I think it's not just the initiative, but when you are as a teacher, kind of like see, that you wanted to make changes and kind of like influence, your community in a better way, by teaching this to your students. I think it's then the community will actually help, because the reason why I made the rocketry club in Presidio is not just because, hey, I just wanted to create a club. I know I am very passionate about aviation and aerospace, but I felt that there is a need. And because of my sensitivity to my community and to the needs of my community, I was able to use that passion of mine to spark that interest from group of students who, in general, I mean, sad to say, in general, nobody expects them to achieve anything. And as a teacher, I felt like, at one time we had this year, in graduation day, where we are missing 4 students in graduation seats because those students ended up, passing away or dying before they even reached graduation. We have nothing to do in Presidio after school, especially during the summer. So students ended up getting involved in what? Drug addiction, alcoholism, there's teenage pregnancy. Some of my students died, or some of a student died actually in drag racing and even committed suicide. So I felt like there is a need, and I wanted to be that catalyst of change and be that advocate of change for this little town. I mean, for God's sake, it is one of the oldest town in the state of Texas. The first Christmas in Texas is held in that town, and it still look old. And I felt like I need to give back. And that's one way of giving back, by helping them, just through this club. I'm not expert. I only learned on my own through the internet. Thank you to the AIA, AEX program and National Association of Rocketry. I was able to learn on my own, and I was able to give back to the kids and show them, these are the skills that you would actually need so you could survive. And there is a whole lot of, opportunities outside of Presidio. But it's not just about opportunities too. Even challenges, we also should not be discriminated in terms of challenges. So regardless of our race, regardless of our gender, regardless of our economic background, we should be happy that there are challenges and we can beat that challenge because we can actually win.
It looks like John has something to say, and then we need to go to the 4th poll question. I can already see that we're about to run out of time, so
right.
We have some more ground to cover.
Well, I was just going to second what Sheila said, and that one of the great things about aerospace is that it shows you there's a bigger world outside of whatever world it is you're living in, right? Whether it's the town that you grew up in, regardless of where that is, whether it's a rocket group across the other side of town or the next town, and you just keep opening these doors to bigger and bigger venues, and eventually, you realize the entire universe is out there at your beck and call. And that's really what we do. Is we can never pay back, but that's where the expression of paying forward is, that
Right.
is that working on that. And then one of the great lines I heard a NASA associate administrator say a couple of years ago was that the most important thing you learn when you deal with hardware is humility. And that is absolutely right. That when you start to actually build things in the physical world, you realize how hard it really is. And that is one of the most important things I think we do as aerospace educators, is bring that into the students' lives. It's almost frightening to me, now having been in the industry for quite a while, to compare it back and to see how accurate the simulations of some of these hobby activities are of what the real engineering world is like. It doesn't always work the first time you do it for anybody, right? And so part of that is teaching the kids the value of perseverance in this. And I think, naming the next rover on Mars has been a great, it's named that for a reason.
Right. The Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, they all learned from their mistakes, right? So let's move to the next. Amy,
Greg.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before we leave this entirely, I just want to ask Jim a quick question along the lines of what Sheila said. And I promise, Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know it's your portion. Jim, I mean, Sheila's talking about the challenges she had in Presidio. At a school like the Ohio State University, which is incredibly popular. People want to go there like crazy. It's hard to get in. It's very expensive. It's hard to get scholarships, and it rocks, right? It's a big deal. You must have students whose dream it was to go there and who can't afford it and are there under scholarships and grants that are climbing their way to the top to be a student of yours. How often do you see that? And how do you stick with them and keep their dreams going?
Yes, and it's a pathway, riddled with potholes and adversity, but what we are committed to is walking with the students along that pathway. And so I think some of the most delightful interactions are with students who come from, an immigrant family and are struggling, they're working a job to feed their family and, taking classes and forging ahead in this technical curriculum. These are the students we love to support and to empower. And we're learning more and more what adversity and what challenges they face and how to help them through that. But this is our mission as educators. This is what's exciting to lead to the diverse, multifaceted workforce that we all hope to see.
And I bet you
that's a very nice lead.
Sorry, go
That's
ahead.
a very nice lead into the last, or next to last little segment we have in the last poll question. And as Jim just said better than we could, to build the workforce of tomorrow, we have to incorporate the entire talent pool. And if Amy would put up the fourth poll question, according to the FAA, of all pilots, what percentage of them are female? And this includes commercial, private, and student pilots. So the entire pilot population, what percentage are female? And while those are coming up, Scott, can you talk a little bit about how you ensure that underserved communities, minority populations, and females are represented and encouraged in your classrooms?
Sure. So if you think about a traditional classroom, the teacher is standing up in front of the classroom. The teacher is imparting knowledge. They call on students who are expected to get the right answer. If they don't, then they're ridiculed by their peers. It's no wonder that students who come to that space with perhaps less cultural capital, or who are reluctant or less certain about sort of participating in that space would feel turned off by it. And so as an educator, one of the roles that we take super seriously is making it safe to A, pose honest questions, and then B, to experience and acknowledge failure. Right? I was struck by both Sheila and Jim's comment, right, about John's comment about, right, things don't go according to plan all of the time. And so as we think about supporting our people who have been traditionally underserved in physics and in aviation in particular, right? It's incumbent upon us to make sure that they are explicitly welcomed, right, and that they have an opportunity to experience, right, to experience the physics in the way that we hope that they would, right. So in the physics classroom, one of the things we know is that given a choice, boys will tend to hog the materials and sort of muscle out the female students. And so, right, as an easy teacher move then is to make sure that girls are grouped together when there's sort of playtime with equipment. Right, another thing to do is when students are expected to build something is to make everyone work individually the first time, right? And sometimes we'll have people who will produce fabulous initial results, and sometimes it'll be a complete failure. But when it comes time to work in a group, everyone brings experience to the table, whether or not their parents could afford a summer in, space camp.
And Sheila, could you elaborate on that just a little bit? I mean, you teach in a school now where a lot of parents can afford a summer in space camp. And by the way, the poll result questions came up and 40% got it right. 7% of all pilots in this country, commercial, private, and student pilots, only 7% are female. And I know everybody on this call wants to change that. Everybody in this panel and all the participants too. Sheila, you teach in a school district not far from where I live, where a lot of parents can afford space camp and can afford to send their kids to a lot of places. And you also taught in a school where, as you said before, in Texas, where that was not the case. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Well, teaching in Northern Virginia, it's kind of like a big switch from a very under-resourced, and underserved kind of like place now to one of the, well, I should say one of the richest counties in the whole country. But I am just very happy and very blessed, especially with the school that I am at, Oakton High School, because administrators are very supportive of all the programs that are set in place. To be honest, we have more than 100 clubs in the school. It's just like amazing. I personally am kind of like have a sponsor for a couple of clubs: the rocketry, the robotics, the physics, and now the campus connectors, so that the high school students are getting connections and networking with the university. But the difference is, I guess, when you are in the under-resourced school district, there really is, they already mentioned it, that there's lack of experience in teaching aerospace and aviation. So that could be daunting. There's lack of training and lack of exposure. So it may be very difficult to incorporate, that courses into your lengthy curriculum already. But here in Northern Virginia, we even have, engineering and aviation class in high school. So it's already is being offered. So I felt like, wow, it's already is there. But Mr. Langford said last time that even if we have this kind of exposure, if you don't have that technical literacy, you couldn't really connect what you are learning from class to the right skills that you have. That would be also is kind of like is tough. So I don't know. I'm just very blessed to be working right now with students and parents and teachers that are very supportive of the kids.
You all are just blowing me away tonight. I almost think we have to have a number 3, but that's probably going to be overkill. As we start to come to a culminate to the end of this, I have 2 big questions I'm going to ask of Jim and John. I want to address something that Charlie Bolden said in our questions, and also there was a comment about the AOPA program You Can Fly. I wanted to make you all aware that the National Aviation Hall of Fame is with the support of PBS, is currently developing a curriculum for elementary age kids. Our aviation and aerospace curriculum will be focused on grades 2 through 6. So that 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old will be hit, but also younger kids, because I can't get it out of my head about this notion that younger kids are not afraid to take risks and that, and I love hearing the common thread that through all of you, that we've got to get these kids excited, give them a spark and keep it going. So, you know, Charlie said, you know, what about our young African-American kids? Our curriculum is only going to be available in underserved communities for free with the support of foundations and partnering cities. So that's our target, that's our goal, that's our mission. So people like Charlie's history will be shared to kids in underserved populations. And we're hoping to connect that in some way with AOPA's free curriculum for high school kids. There might be a thread that aviation partners can work together. I'd like to ask a question of Jim and then a question of John, and then we're going to let John kind of finish things out for us. But Jim, I want to know, is there any common threads that you see in students that go on to succeed in aviation and aerospace? And John, after Jim answers, could you tell us what it is, you know, if you're looking to those college graduates or those, you know, post-secondary or even post-high school, what are you looking for? What are the skill sets? What excites you about people to hire? So Jim, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Sure. You know, there's a few threads that I can think of. A lot of our students, you know, if they come in with the mindset that their intelligence is fixed, that can be an inhibitor to growth. And so a growth mindset is one that leads to success in the long run, where people have this positive outlook that, yes, I can learn these things and I can do these things. That's a big indicator of success. Maybe another thread would be this theme of creativity, risk-taking, you know, being bold and passionate, you know, and I think these are traits that can be cultivated and developed. It's not just an intrinsic thing, but it's something that can be fostered and grown. Another hallmark of success or of our great students are good communication, interpersonal skills, the ability to work with others in a team environment. And one final area might be, I guess I could categorize it as lifetime learners. You know, these citizens of the world, people who are willing to continue learning and exploring how what they know fits in a global context. All of those things, interestingly enough, are really not directly dependent on technical knowledge of aerodynamics and, you know, the specifics of the discipline. You know, of course, people need to have a basic competency and to be able to succeed. But all these other dimensions, I think, are really critical for success and what we see our students do.
Excellent. So Scott said be bold. Sheila said no excuses. Jim Gregory just gave me a list of 4 things to look for. And now John Langford's going to tell us what he's looking for.
Well, just I think your question was more sort of from the employment side, right? Where as we develop new talent for the industry, what are we looking at? And I think, as others have said, the first thing you look for are the personality traits, right? The passion, the commitment, the perseverance, the things those are the real determinants of success in the long run. And I think the first thing everybody is looking for, the character of the individuals. But in terms of actual subject matter expertise, there's no wrong answer, right? But choosing something that you're passionate about and becoming an expert in it is a key to success. In terms of what is the current shortage today, I would say it's in robotics, right? It's the technologies that surround the areas of robotics, whether it's on the mechatronics side or whether it's on the software side. So things like programming, the combinations of electrical engineering, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Those are the things that all of us in aerospace, that's the future of aerospace, the increasing autonomy and the interaction between humans and machines. And all of us, whether it's the schools, the universities, whether it's the companies, whether it's the professional societies, we're all struggling with how to make that move from sort of the traditional aerospace disciplines, what we call the brigade disciplines, into that integration with robotics, which is really so important going forward.
So Sheila and Scott now have their marching orders. Jim Gregory will be ready for it. And John, John, you have a resource you'd like to share with teachers before we sign off.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I just wanted to close with this. One of the topics that comes up a lot is resource constraint, right? And we all know that the teachers fund a lot of school supplies and miscellaneous things out of their own pocket. And the AIAA has a program of teacher grants, classroom grants, which, you know, we're all working to improve these programs, but this is the program that we have today. And this year's deadline is in about 48 hours. So if you took one thing away from today's seminar, I would encourage any classroom teacher to go to the link on the bottom of this and to reach out. There is an application once you navigate through the website there. It's not a challenging application. And the AIAA will help provide up to $500 per classroom for supplies that pertain to aerospace teaching. And there's lots of other places to get curriculum help and support. There's one last name I wanted to acknowledge on this, that in terms of really making an impact that most of us can only aspire to have the impact that this guy has. But on this call is a name near the bottom. Vernon Estes is on that, and Vern Estes will be celebrating, I think, his 91st birthday here in a week or something like that. I'm going out on a limb. But in the late 1950s, he started what became the canonical model rocket company called Estes, and created a whole hobby and that has become foundational to much of aerospace STEM today. And I just wanted to salute him and recognize him. And his company today continues. Nicole Baer, who's the education director there, posted a link on the chat room just a minute ago for some curriculum materials that they've been doing. But individuals make really huge differences in this business. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great, John. I mean, I think as Amy said at the start of this, we're going to be compiling all the information from this one and the one in December, and getting the information out to people who've tuned in and making it more widely available so folks can get access to these various resources. And hopefully all the teachers on here are seeing the slide that's up now and will apply for that. This has been a fabulous panel. Most of the comments I see popping up on the bottom are asking for another one, or wishing it went longer and all of that. Charlie Bolton even apologized for having to jump off to go to a meeting because he wanted to stay on and listen to all of you. But you've all provided not only great information, but evidence of your passion. And I think with all the resources that have popped up over these two webinars, Amy and I are determined to get those out and work with all of you to make this, to make these kind of things happen and bring more people into STEM and into aviation subjects. And that is all the time we have for tonight. I'm looking around, there's still no donuts, Amy. So we'll have to figure that part out, but it is after 5 o'clock, so maybe something else. But I want to thank everybody for attending. On behalf of Amy and myself, really thank you all for the teachers who are on here. Amy, we looked at the participants, and usually we recognize 80 or 90% of them. This time we didn't recognize 80 or 90%. So I think a lot of teachers are on there, and Amy, that's a great thing, right?
Right. But yes, thank you for everybody for attending, and thank you to our panelists, Jim Gregory, Scott Mccomb, Sheila Contino, and John Langford. Wow, you guys sure do make us look good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for.
Thank you.
Thank you all for all you're doing. And good night to everyone.
Pleasure to know you all.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
Good night,
again to all of the
everyone.
teachers out there.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks to all of them. Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.